And let's get the session started. Sumit, over to you.
So good afternoon. And, we were discussing while we were here in the speaker's lounge that our topic seems very utopian and vague. And so we thought we'll start, it says video first country. So फिर हमने सोचा हम हिंदी में शुरू करेंगे और आज आप लोगों से अपनी मन की बात करेंगे because video first country है तो उस essence में बोलेंगे. So हम हैं यहाँ अपनी मन की बात करने के लिए आप लोगों के साथ और आपकी मन की बात सुनने के लिए. So we've got a very interesting panel, and I think all of us in our journeys are here to share some of our learnings and learn a lot from you, because I don't think any of us can really stand up and say, this is the secret sauce and this is the recipe to success, because I think most of the marketeers in the country are still learning, on video. There are certain things that work, certain things that don't. None of us have the ready mantras for success. So it's going to be an interesting discussion. We're looking forward to it. Not talking much about, I think we all know what Jio did to the country. We all know how data has become affordable, and therefore there's so much more video consumption happening, and how can we leverage that? So just some facts I was reading, and we're predicting about 705 million smartphones by 2020, end of 2020. Last year has seen video consumption go up by 5x in 12 months. That's good news for marketeers. Affordability is actually opening out a lot of segments. So a lot of us now do not only think that you'll get millennials digitally, right? Affordability is opening up women from tier 2, tier 3 cities. Rural, in some aspects, is coming on. So as marketeers, you're not just now creating for millennials. What we're going to do today, therefore, is try and share some of the things that we have burnt our fingers with, mistakes that we've made, small successes that we're seeing, and we hope that it's useful. And we're going to kind of not keep the Q&A just at the end, because that's what we discussed, that let's pull in questions as and when. So please feel free to raise your hand. We won't do the last 10 minutes only, because sometimes, because we're discussing something, there could be a question or a success story from the audience. We would love to hear and learn from you all. So please kind of feel free and interrupt if you kind of have a question there. So without much ado, I'm going to actually request Simran to maybe just kind of touch upon the current ecosystem on video consumption and all for us.
Sure.
Over
Thanks.
to you, Simran.
I think what we're witnessing today is truly democratization of technology. And I think we all are fortunate enough to actually witness this in front of us. Think about this, almost 7-8 years back, we were sitting on our 10 to 12 million active smartphone users. Today we're talking about 300 million, and then it's going to boom. Price is one aspect, the affordability is there, we all know. But then also the experience has evolved. From 4-inch screen to 5-inch screen to now we're talking about bezel-less frames. So the overall experience of consuming data has evolved. Almost a year back at Motorola, we had launched, let's say, a modular phone wherein you can just simply snap on a projector mod and watch video in a truly theater environment. So the ecosystem in terms of hardware has evolved, and meaning geo phenomena is no new news. I was talking to someone the other day, and then they said that every time we say before Geo and after Geo, it reminds you of before Christ and after Christ. So that's kind of true. But then, yes, the overall ecosystem is ready in terms of the hardware, the data, which is readily available from almost 250 rupees per GB to now 10 rupees per GB. So that's the angle that we're talking about. So yeah, so I think India as a nation is truly ready as a video-first country.
I think we'll move into something a little more detailed now into video advertising. So when we all started our journeys on video, somebody maybe 6 years ago, somebody 8 years ago, somebody 3 years ago, you thought of video in one particular format. You thought of the platform, you thought of the publisher, and you thought it had to be, and we've all traditionally made TVCs, so we were thinking those formats, should it be a 15, should it be a 20, should it be a 1 minute, it's digital, I can play something long, no, it's not working, I'll play something short. But in our own journeys, videos really evolved, and formats, there's so many different types of formats now. There are brands doing documentaries, there's co-creation happening, there are long formats, short formats, there are bumper ads, somebody's saying 5 seconds work, somebody says 6 seconds work. And I think different things work with different audiences, different things work with different brands on their journeys. And let's hear from some of our panelists on what they have to say about what kind of content has really worked, and is there one secret recipe or sauce really to get it right? So Pallavi, maybe you can share your journey with us, and your thoughts.
I think, and you touched on a very interesting point here on, over a period of time, back in 2012, we said we need to create a compelling content. I think that's gone are the days. It's about our audience. You need to really understand the psychographic. You need to understand the right TG. And most importantly, as marketers, and personally, what I've learned over a period of time, learn, unlearned, evolve, and then again learned, is that it's about really talking to and co-creating content with the right people. Today, if we look at, a So Delhi, or we look at Little Black Book, or we look at for travel, Tripoto, these people are really giving us great insights. Talking to the right audience doesn't mean creating branding. It is important to create content which is going to be talking to your target audience, but it's also very important to understand the platforms you're going to be talking to. So that's where it comes, and what we've kind of learned at our end and with my team is that it's very, very, it's become integral to the brands that they should know that it's about audience, it's about understanding the behaviors, talking to the right platform, understanding their audience, and don't think of this one great idea which is going to be the secret sauce. It isn't. It is actually how you execute that idea with one simple idea which somebody's done, but how you've delivered that with the right emotional storytelling is the secret sauce. Thank you. Yeah. Pranav, would you want to?
Yeah, I think Pranav, it'll be nice to hear from you.
Honestly, as I'm going to represent the content creators, not the marketeers, which all you guys are. Honestly, I've seen the kind of content which has been coming up, and we were discussing this. What content for what platform has been the question for the last about 2 to 3 years. I think we need to move away from that. What content for and for whom, which can be supported by data or otherwise, and what language works for whom, is very, very important to play that particular role. Whether you're trying to sell a car or a bike or a toothpaste or whatever, it really needs to hit the right chords with the audience that you're creating to. And that was the original brief of marketing, but I just think it's been hyper-localized to a certain extent where you need to cater to everyone. And I've seen a lot of content creators that we work with, they're really focused on the old school of things. We'll probably touch that topic as Sumit will bring it up probably later. But that's where we need to move away from. It has to be hyper-localized. It has to be in languages. It has to be catering to that set of audience. Not everybody is watching Altered Carbon on Netflix. Sorry, Netflix, but yeah, that's not the audience for everyone who's probably planning to buy something which you need to cater to. That's my take right now.
Thank you. We've usually used video digitally for consumers. Most of us do B2C communication, and very few of us actually have been effectively able to be used that medium for B2B. And we're very lucky that we have Meenu here today, and they've done some interesting work on the B2B side, and we thought that's something we should definitely hear about, because there's not too much on the B2B side that has been done on video, on the digital platforms for consumers. So Meenu, over to you. We would love to hear from you.
Before I get started, how many of us in the audience are from B2B? Just show of hands. That's how a rare breed we are, right? We don't get we don't get to talk about the nicer, emotional, sexy stories that the B2C brands get to talk about. I must say that we are laggards in this entire value chain of telling video stories, right? Especially we in B2B tech, we think we are the experts on our subject matter and we want to educate the audience. We are most of the times very bad at converting that education into beautiful, emotional story for our end consumer, right? We love our jargons, we love our technology, we love our subject matter. And what has worked for us is actually taking a step back and unlearn that traditional B2B advertising. I mean, a typical B2B marketer would say, okay, let's put 50% of my digital marketing budget for video creation, maybe 0% for amplification, and get an influencer cluster, talk to Twitter, get me some 50,000 new followers, that's about it. What we have tried to experiment and that's worked well for us is, we have 2-3 kind of audiences, right? One is, of course, our CXO community that we go and sell to. Second is our potential and current associates or employees that we plan to hire. So we have very clearly tried and understand and mapped the lookalikes of our audience, right? So for example, in CXO audience community, we've partnered with our partners like Wall Street Journal, right? We have partnered with brands and we have partnered with technology experts, futurists, who can tell the story and not necessarily sell the story, right? So I think telling the story with the right influencer, with right futurist, with right media partner has really helped us. The second biggest unlearning for us was we thought video marketing is all about the 30, 60, 90-second ads. Trust me, it was a revelation for me, right? Where we have just gotten into so many variable formats for so many variable channels, and I'm sure Pranav will have an expert point of view that, Meenu, how much do you actually spend on all those formats? So that's what my submission is, Sumit.
There were a few hands that were risen in the audience doing B2B. Yeah, there's a hand there. So can someone hand over a mic there? And here. Yeah, we would, of course, your questions. And then if there's anything that you've attempted on B2B and it seems to be working, I think we would love to learn from you as well, Can somebody hand over mics to the audiences? Yeah, thank you.
Great point by you, Meenu, in terms of that we actually cannot struck the chord in terms of doing this emotional storytelling. I'm from EY, and we just can't talk about sad emotions because we sell like technology solutions, and most of the time we are auditing these firms. But what we recently tried for one of our marquee programs, and that worked very well for us, was, so we do this Entrepreneur of the Year awards each year, and wherein we felicitate entrepreneurs from across the country. Now, amongst these, set of these shining individuals, there are some of them who've come from that strata of life who've, not really had a lot of money and backup plans and investments to do things. So we did this emotional storytelling for these entrepreneurs, and we targeted that video campaign to a lot of categories on YouTube on the day of the awards. So like, if the awards was going to start at like 7 p.m., we did a targeted campaign at 4 p.m. We stopped it at 7 p.m. And then when the award, the Entrepreneur of the Year was was announced, next morning, we did a video targeted campaign on the winner. That just got us massive views. And I'm not just talking about like repeated views. I'm talking about like unique clicks of like with 50,000 spends, I'm getting like a unique click of about 1.5 lakhs. So agree with you a lot. But I think emotional piece has to be we have to get in there. Yeah.
Thank you. There was somebody else who raised a hand that side. Can we hand over a mic there, please?
Hi, Meenu. So in the past, I've worked in the B2B space and the tech business. So majorly, all the tech businesses from India or otherwise, the major markets, if you see, is the US, the UK, and the West, right? So the biggest buzzword or the biggest marketing thing for us is thought leadership, right? So how do we prepare the thought leadership? We get there through case studies, through our expertise, through our subject matter expert, as you said. But with respect to videos, now I'm into the B2C industry, and I see that the videos that we make, are consumed very easily on the advertising channels, on the social media channels. But the challenge with B2B is that if we make these videos very well, okay, how do we make them consume it by the consumers? Because my consumer in the tech industry, in the West, as you rightly said, is the CXO, is the engineering director, is the IT director, right? So that's a challenge that I have always had in my past experience. And video consumption, yeah, is I think one major thing that we need to work on.
I couldn't agree with you more. And, we were discussing, when we were speaking when we were talking in the speakers lounge, that most of us B2B marketers, when we put our budget for video production, how much do we put for amplification? 1:2, 1:3, 1:4. Any guess?
Hardly any.
Hardly any, right? So we created a fantastic series of video, but how are we amplifying that? That's the most important piece of it that we sometimes B2B marketers, we miss out. And I'm sure it's the same case with some of the B2C as well.
B2C, I think a lot of us feel that we've created the content.
Absolutely.
And we ignore the fact that maybe you need 10x or 15x now to amplify it, to actually do justice to it.
Absolutely. And I must confess, even the most educated CMOs and CEOs think, video ban gaya, social media पे डाल दो, अपने आप मार्केट हो जाएगा.
और डिजिटल सस्ता
है ना, डिजिटल सस्ता है, इतना पैसा क्यों चाहिए, right? It's so you can do it in free. I think there's also a challenge of educating some of our B2B, executives on that area. Just one more point I wanted to make. I know Sumita must be thinking I'm sabotaging the session. Is one example. So we actually did a UP 100 project with UP government, Tech Mahindra. And you can imagine, a large project like that involved a BPO, infrastructure, cloud, technology, the whole 9 yards. And he said, okay, fair enough. So how do we tell this story? Like any other tech organization, we created a great architecture. We had infra, we had cloud, we had BPO, we had Mahindra Defense come into the picture. Let's go and create a video menu and explain to the world how we did it. I said, trust me, nobody gives a shit about how did you do it. What people care about it, what did you deliver for that end UP citizen, right? So what we did was, it was a very unique all-woman team. It was an all-woman team, okay? And we captured real emotions of some of the citizens of UP on how they benefited from it. In fact, in the entire video, we did not have a single Tech Mahindra executive. And trust me, for a B2B tech company, to not have any of your exec in your video, not sure if you'll get all the brownie points. We actually had ADG of UP at that point in time talk about that story clearly from how that program delivered safety for citizens for a state which is 3 times the size of New York. And that story gave us the maximum ROI, Pranav, to say, and I know Pranav is going to say, you guys just going to talk about how many million views and how many click-throughs.
That's the ask, honestly. You go to probably an agency or a client. Clients don't meet us mostly, but agencies, you go to them and they're looking for how many views, what engagement, what kind of metrics. They're not even bothered about what kind of content you're going to create, or they're super bothered in trying to make a TVC for 1/10 the price. That's what our interest levels is. And on your B2B part, I just wanted to add, I have a case study, which is we worked with a company called Capgemini, which is probably competition to you, but they came into India and they were having difficulties to recruit people. Nobody knew who they were, where they came from, and the main thing was we need to stock up like 100,000 people. Where do we get these people from? Most people, they thought that, they are some shop floor company or a mechanical company coming from somewhere. They opened the centers in Chennai, Hyderabad, Bangalore, the usual. And they suddenly realized that they're not getting anybody. Or people are coming to them, taking a nice offer and going and negotiating with Infosys, Tech Mahindra, and all those kind of companies. They did a whole series, a completely digital-led series, which was just getting techies into a room and telling them, or having a contest with them. And then they did regional ads. Though it was not video in those days, I'm talking about 4 years ago, it was regional ads telling them of the context of the company. And guess, Tamil Nadu is the largest contributor of engineers, and I'm pretty sure that you will sort of verify with that, and the entire regional base worked for them. My your take on the entire UP thing. As long as you're able to connect with that audience, with the human interest, it is going to work. You just need to tell them that you have a horizon and you have a voice. That generation of user-generated content which was frivolous is gone. Yeah. The user-generated content today is going to be meaningful. Yeah. One side you have Instagram and those videos that you see or stories that you see which are somewhat frivolous, but on the other hand, there are really good human interest stories which are coming up. Yeah. So those are the things we need to keep a watch for. You will connect with somebody in that old school 2 degrees of separation or 1 degree of separation. It's important to have that voice and message pass through from me to him to you to you. Yeah. Not the broadcast or not the distribution matrix where you make something and just let it go on YouTube. No, and the 10x budget.
The amplification. No, I think we actually heard 2 very interesting stories on B2B, and both actually giving us how an emotional angle could be kind of built into the story. And as Pranav said, whether it is consumer, B2C or B2B, what is important is the connect. You know, does it always have to be humor? Does it always have to be emotional? Does it have to be sad? There's no secret recipe there. Or what has worked once will not always work. But I think some of the changes, and I congratulate Meenu, you and your team actually, because it's not very easy actually, as you said, in some of the setups to change, you know, to have management not feature into something and talk about what they did, but rather actually go and, you know, talk on the benefits. So we can see some changes and some companies doing this, so we encourage others as well to kind of, you know, start the journey and have their own learnings. You know, and 2 interesting topics that I picked up from actually your conversations. One was this whole influencer piece and the other amplification, you know. I think a lot of us who belong to the marketing fraternity will agree with the fact that we don't keep enough for amplification. Some of us might be ourselves in the shoes where we're not allowing our teams that budget or that leeway actually for amplification, while others might be struggling to get it from our own bosses and they're not agreeing. And that is a real challenge because social is no longer viraling. Those companies need to make money and they're monetizing every little bit. So you can't just create something, put it there, and then hope that you will have people see it, you know. So while we heard the B2B side, maybe Pallavi, you can touch a little bit on from your experiences as well, because yours is purely B2C,
yeah.
You know.
And I think, you know, while what Meenu touched on, it's very, very, very imperative. But whether it's B2B or B2C, by the end of the day, you're talking to a human being, you know. So I think that's agnostic. But just going back to influencer marketing, everybody says I'm an influencer, and there are so many influencers today. A lot of times, you know, along with my team, and I have a team of very interesting people in office, they come from agency backgrounds, they come from different cultures, and that's one thing I'm a big believer of, hiring talented women in team, and auto is one segment where you don't find so many women. So that's one change. You know, and we keep debating that most of the influencers are actually broadcasters. And today you go on Facebook page, and we were, you know, talking about it. They're for 10 seconds talking about one brand, and after a minute talking about another brand. So really not influencer in that way. There are very few today influencers, if we look at, who are talking about only one single brand and endorsing it, believing in it. So that's one piece, and I'll share one example. We've recently done a series with few of our owners, and I've done in my previous organization as well. The real influencers are people who actually use your product. They're not the people, they're the people who actually will tell you the real story. For me, Meenu is a real influencer, or, you know, Pranav is, because I can relate to them more than somebody who sits 50 feet up there and talks about what they've achieved. They've achieved great, but I can't relate to them because they're not at the level I am. So we did a very small storytelling format with a lady in Calcutta. She's 56 years old, and she has an old MG, the brand where I work for, and her story was so beautiful that she's grown up with that car with her dad, and she told that story, and it was Women's Day, so topical, and we shot her story short Calcutta in a very beautiful way, and she told that it's not a product, it's actually a story in her life that she's shared memories, she's had a great relationship with her dad, and she used to go with her in her car every day to college, to school, and now she's a professor. So she actually, when she posted that video on YouTube, and we didn't do anything, she shared it, and we got millions views and shares and comments about her video. And it's a branded content, but a very subtle branding. So you don't have to be really doing influencer marketing by being so branded on your face that customers sometimes and audience really, this is too much for me to handle because there's so many brands pushing content to me. So that's one of the storytelling format. And there are a few other brands who do, and I'm not talking about the brand I come from, but I get Red Bull, for example, does great, beautiful video content storytelling and a lot to learn from there. And they do it with athletes. They do it with people who have, underprivileged people. They do stuff with, like, for example, Culture Machine in terms of short format, documentaries for now Netflix. We all watch Netflix a lot because of various reasons and get influenced. I think marketers really have to change, and it starts from us taking, looking at audience and deciding what works for them, not what works for me. We are not the person. We sometimes think, I am the customer. Yes, I am the customer. But you really have to think at a larger lens that I'm talking to people with different backgrounds, different cultures, different preferences, different behaviors, different psychographics. How can I talk to each one of them in their comfortable space and emotionally touch that chord which brings them a little more closer to our brand, and then ultimately leading to buy our brand. That's what marketers are for. Yeah. So
Thanks.
please.
Simran, I'm sure you have a lot to share on influencer videos, etc. So we'd love to hear from you.
So meaning, briefly, I was working for Twitter. And then, because of the nature of the platform, a lot of brands used to approach us saying that it's an influencer, celeb-friendly environment, and can you get us celebs or influencers for that matter? More often than not, what we have seen is that there is no strategy there. Meaning, the same, like Pallavi mentioned, that the same guy is talking about brand A, yesterday he was talking about brand B. Can we look at something like a friends of brands? Can brands actually identify key 3 to 4 people who become the face of your brand on social? Why do we need to always approach different individuals and then start from scratch? Because then it's frivolous. There is no, meaning it's not genuine. If you can give your product to them, let them use it in their day-to-day life. And that's something that we have seen. There's this one brand who kind of identified that these 4 people will be the key influencer for me on digital. In a course of 6 months down the line, the kind of ROI, whether it's in terms of the sheer volume that they're generating out of the influencers, or for that matter, the conversions that they were driving, courtesy the amplification they were doing, was phenomenal. So I think we need to move from doing project-based stuff in terms of multiple individuals to have a long-form strategy for influencers as well. Now that is one. Second, in terms of, I think, the formats that we were discussing, I think we need to keep in mind a lot of things. One is, of course, the audience. What is the persona of your brand? What is it that you want to stand for on social? Meaning, we have seen more often than not, every brand is talking about key topical moments, which is great, meaning I completely agree there, but then what is the purpose of your brand? You need to identify your persona, figure out the platform which works. So for instance, again, I can talk about Twitter here, that it's about what's live. So if you're going to seed content which is all about in the moment, then that works brilliantly. We had an example wherein we were launching a product or the ecosystem never existed, like modular phones. We partnered with Google and we did something called Vogon, wherein real-time basis, the ad copies were getting customized basis the content that the consumer was consuming. So for instance, if we had a JBL mod, and if the consumer is watching a video of Rihanna, it would say, meaning experience Rihanna on a JBL mod. And if it's, let's say, Coldplay, it would change dynamically. So again, the platform remains the same, but the objective was very different. It was very easy for any brand to just say that, okay, fine, I'm going to run a TVC and hope that it's going to resonate with the audience. But then if you have multiple genres like music, photography, movies, then you can't have one size that fits all.
And I've seen this in my ecosystem a lot, that we fall in love with the platform.
Yeah.
You know, we don't fall in love with our strategy or our audience. We just fall in love with the platform. That if my competition is on Snapchat, I got to be on Snapchat. Do we have a strategy on Snapchat? What is the story? Is your story even amenable to a Snapchat format? I think sometimes we get too carried away that if wine was a fad, let's get on wine. I think that's one of my learning.
That's very interesting because whether it's Snapchat, Instagram, YouTube, you know, I think traditionally what we were doing is, while I think the myth on the TVC will work on digital is something I think that got busted, you know, while we all started burning our fingers doing that, because I think 7-8 years ago, all of us also did the same thing, you know. And then it was very easy, put your logo pehle, you know, because YouTube would tell you, yaar, log skip kar lete hain, to logo aage kar lo, job will be done. And then we realized, no, that doesn't work, you know. But what is interesting is that instead of just creating for the platform and actually for a target where, firstly, you always thought that these platforms will only get you millennials, which is not true. And the other thing is then some of us who are at more mature stages then would target, right, on whatever's available, right? And most of us would do it with age, right, or geo, right? And this geo, of course, I mean geography. So, you know, now what is interesting is that just the example that you gave, and another very famous example is the Campbell Soup example. What they did was just wonderful, you know, created 2,300 videos, you know, for YouTube. So how many of us are actually thinking of context? Because I think that makes a lot of difference. So while he's my user, but he's actually consuming some other content there. If I'm purely wanting to just serve an ad to him, while he's looking at books, can I talk in his language? While he's listening to Coldplay, am I talking in his language? Because it's different communities, it's different passion streams. And some of us, when we're not creating content for that consumption, but actually overlaying an ad, because a lot of us do that, we create ads and we kind of overplay them on a lot of formats, whether it's on news sites, etc. Are we really thinking of the context? Because that's where your message will obviously get more noticed. You know, I think that's an angle that we all should kind of keep in mind. No. Do you want to add something?
I just wanted to add one thing, and you know, actually Simran touched on that, is that it's great marketers and, you know, publishers or networks, they all talk about emotional storytelling. But when pressure hits the roof is when storytelling is told, you know, step back and let's really look at numbers. So that's where I think it's become very imperative that from day one, from planning, one needs to really understand that we need to build in-house capability. Brands and, you know, will go through that recession and the boom period. It's so important that from day one, we have a planning stage where we know that what kind of people in-house can deliver a result, which may be an external party, because it's a shared resource, will take much longer. And I think that's become, and I come from an industry which is traditionally very, very, you know, focused on formats and TVs and newspapers, that people need to really understand that it's very, very imperative, and I use that word again and again, that content factory has become the key and the center of any brand for having a right command center, understanding that it's not that one person can do everything. You know, it's not one size fits all. So content factory to me is very, very close to my heart, and we are working very, you know, strategically on that, hiring people who understand data, understanding people who understand design, philosophy. It's not just about writing a copy. Most time writers are not paid, but that's what is the customer looking at. How are you talking to me in my language? Aesthetically, how does your narrative looks to me? So it's not that TVC looks different to digital looks different, short format, GIFs, all of them have to tell a story which is not branded but influenced. And that's what to me seems that Content Factory can does. And I keep telling people that Content Factory can really drive results, which a lot of time management doesn't think. But as marketers, I think we need to really take responsibility that marketing is no more about creating beautiful ads.
Thanks. You know, Pranav, when we were discussing in the lounge, I think one very interesting fact that you were sharing with us is really how all the trending videos and all the maximum views are now actually going to regional. And, you
Let's
know,
do an exercise.
you know,
I think everyone would have YouTube.
Great.
You guys have YouTube on your phones, right? Or no? I think most of you guys do. Just go to the trending videos. Just go to the trends button on it. I just want you guys to look at what is trending in the country and the belief of that good content or bad content or what kind of content should be fed to us. Nagin, somewhere there? It's Bollywood, it's humor, it's BBK wines, yeah. The fact is that the content is changed to that. As somebody who comes from an English broadcaster background, we are experimenting with content which is very regional, very in the space where people are watching it. The people sitting in this room are probably not our audience. You have to realize from the transition of that the number of phones to 300 million, the 300 million phones were not bought by the people sitting in this room. They were bought by people externally. So we have to evolve to a regional stage and say that, fine, we guys are ready to reach out to you in your language, in your context, in your way, and understanding the sensibilities of it. Don't go breaking statues of somebody. You have to figure out where to work on that. It's very important for, fine, the BBK wines, the Amit Badana's videos, and all those are great. But is there any structured player except Bollywood in that entire set of the first 20 videos? You'll realize probably not. Again, this is probably for YouTube. Human interest beautifully works on other platforms like Facebook or for that matter. We recently did a video completely in Hindi, or two in fact, I'll just like to quote. One is with a transgender on a style and a makeover show. It got about close to 1 million views, and there was no brand, no this thing. We wanted to change our perception of being absolutely a news publisher. Okay. On the second side, we did with the person who sells clothes outside Tata Cancer Hospital, and the money that she earns, or all the profitability, she hands over to the people who don't have money. And she's not rich. She's just a little stall. So we're trying to engage with people who are real people, like you guys were saying, like Pallavi, Simran, and all of us are saying, but in their language. The second part is, I think we need to start making our videos for the platform, not for the platform, for the device we have. We need to move away from the factor that you're making it for a television screen or you're making it for any other screen. How many hours do you spend on mobile phones? Can anybody guess how much time do we spend every day? It's 8 hours plus. If you're spending 8 hours on a device and we're not making content for it, we as content publishers or content creators are in the wrong space. You know,
that's very interesting, because even when we make digital videos, though we moved away from TVC will not work, but I think very few of us really think mobile. We still think desktop, big screen, you know. And a very important factor that we tend to miss is that 80 to 90% of consumption of YouTube or Facebook, or you know, maybe almost 90 upwards for Snapchat, Instagram, is actually happening through phones. And like somebody mentioned, that we are consumers as well, right? So we kind of forget that. And a lot of times when I see ourselves, when me and my team, we're trying to create content, digital, and we think we're thinking digital, we know it, we very often actually forget to test our own content on mobile. You know, we test it on our laptop screens, and then you realize, you can't read anything we wrote here. You know, and sometimes even your own logo is not visible because you haven't even bothered to test it on the mobile screen. And I think that is important. Well, we're running out of time now, so I think we'll open for questions. Thank you so much, because I'm sure there was much more we thought we'll discuss on tools and technicalities, but that's easy. But it was nice to hear real stories, and I think one big one was that influencers now are not just celebrities but real people, because they can influence and connect much more. The so-called influencers that we thought who were influencers today, somebody used a very nice term, are actually broadcasters now. So that's something that we should kind of keep in mind. And there was a question there, so we'll take maybe one or two questions, and then we'll be around so we can kind of take them offline.
Yeah, so I think we've spoken a lot about content creation and how stories without the branding kind of make more sense. But I think the amplification part is something that we would request the panel to just focus on more, because while I've created a content which does not have a brand, but if I promote it from a Facebook or a YouTube with my brand logo there and a promoted written right down below it, the consumers and me myself as a user will not bother to go through the whole story as such. So some more focus on how do we amplify the content, the video content, apart from Facebook and YouTube. How do we do that?
So I think that's a great question. First is that the kind of content you're creating, that is the most important thing. What is the narrative you've built? If you've built the narrative which is not branded itself, whether you promote it, we all see promoted content, but if the first 4 seconds, depending upon the platform and the audience, you've created that to touch the chord in first 4 seconds, you've done your amplification. But most importantly, it's also third-party endorsements. I think it'd be great if the content is first endorsed through third-party, which is your real people in the content, in your video, and done by so-called right influencers, and then you do your promotion is like cherry on the cake. So I think that kind of format does work, and we've personally done it. It gives you better amplification, because every platform being so monetized, you still have to spend a lot of money to amplify it. But right amplification is building the right narrative. That is the Kickstarter, in my opinion. Yeah. Did I answer your question?
Okay. I think we'll take one more question and then go
Hi,
on.
good afternoon. So we talked a lot about influencer being real people, right? So which brings me to point, obviously we look for positive influencers, positive sentiments, but the negative sentiments do to overflow, right, in the social media space, which brings me to an important question that how much of our companies at this point of time are really putting an effort to have a crisis management cell, to have a proactive approach than a reactive approach? How much do you think it's present, and how early do you think our companies would actually adapt that?
Does anyone want to take it? Yeah? Okay.
Sure, I think you can't shy away from the situation is what I can say. You're not going to meet the same guy every time and just talk about your product and try to sell. If you are an irate customer and if there is a service issue, then if I as a brand is not reacting and not doing anything for you, there is no way that I'm going to get you back with my product and offering. In terms of how people are changing, meaning I see a lot of brands evolving into the bot ecosystem. So there's a lot of automation that is happening. There are brands who are investing a lot of money and infrastructure wherein they're trying to move a lot of public conversation, which is happening on social platforms, to a private zone, courtesy the bots. So we're seeing that evolution happening. We're seeing the CRM integration very deeply linked with the digital and social teams. So it's a very stitched, nice ecosystem that's kind of building. Bots are still nascent, meaning there are very few brands who are kind of, getting that adopted, but then, yeah, I think that's the future.
Yeah, and a lot of brands there where customer service is very important, and right at the beginning, if you see banks and if you see some of the brands where, of course, we all know about the Domino's story and the Pizza Hut story in the US. I think those companies are fairly evolved and they have setups. I can talk from our experiences. We have different kinds of brands in our kitty, and we have some services that we sell to even the consumer side. Otherwise, in the InfoEdge portfolio, we generally monetize the enterprise side. So in Naukri, for example, we have a resume making service, and that is one place where there are a lot of complaints that come in, because a lot of times when people pay to actually get a resume written, the latent expectation is I'll get a job. And when you then don't get a job, then you actually go out and say, hey, they didn't do a good job, they didn't write this well, etc., etc. And so, no, I wouldn't say that for each of our businesses, actually, we have a ready, proactive team. But for businesses where we see a lot of this coming in, 2-3 years ago itself, we realized if we don't have proactively people sitting and doing this, then it's going to damage the brand more, because as you said, negative influence. And how many of us actually put a positive review? Very few, And today as consumers, you also think, yaar, ye social media pe dal do, tab hoga, right? Which actually means that brands are somewhere responding to what is coming out in social media, because there are enough people you meet that I've complained 4 times, nothing's happened, ab lagta hai uske Facebook page pe dalna padega aur tab kuch ho jayega. So I think a lot of the brands have kind of learned and are in that journey, and there is no perfect answer, but the journey's begun because all of us as consumers have started thinking that way.
And I think most of us, again, in this space are falling in love with the technology. Okay, let's botify response management, right? Let's automate resolution. I think we have to invest in humanizing technology here. It's not just about response management. It's not just about you reporting to a CEO that I 100% responded to all the queries. What did you resolve? Do we really?
How did you?
How did you resolve? Right? I think that's the key of it. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure how many of us have a so-called social media crisis cell. But most of the organizations sitting here in this room have a PR crisis cell, because we don't consider social media as a PR channel, right? So that's my take on it.
Well, thank you so much. They're signaling we're already 2 minutes over time and we can't eat into the next panel or the next speaker's time. So thank you so much. This was wonderful. We're going to be around if anybody has any further questions or wants to talk to us offline. We would be more than happy to do it. And I think we'll give a lovely applause for a wonderful audience. Thank you.